Hello, happy Tuesday. Alright, we're going to jump right back in with our slope talk, and this is going to be a page that we're going to come back to later. We're just going to do half of it tonight. So if you want, you can draw a line there on the halfway down. We're going to draw a thinking map to kind of help us put this all together of what we've been talking about. We know our slope is the m, and our y equals mx plus b. So let's talk about what we know about slope. We know that slope is the steepness of a line. Okay. We know that slope is rise, where the line rises over the number that it runs. We kind of talked about that last night. We're going to talk about that more tonight. We know that slope is also a rate of change, what we were doing last week with a constant rate of change, that k equals y over x now transfers into slope, which is y over x. And then we also know that it's the change in y, and this triangle is the Greek symbol for delta. It's a delta, and it means, in math and science, you'll see it used as the words, it means change in. So change in y over the change in x. And then tonight what I want to teach you a little bit, another way to say that, change in y over change in x, is a formula, and it's y minus y over x minus x. So, I want to teach you that tonight, and it goes along right with change in y over change in x. So this is what this means, is you take your two y values, if you have 2 points, take your y values, subtract them, and then your two x values and subtract them, and that will give you the slope of a line. Okay? So, let's go back to last night's notes. Okay? So we're going to go back to last night's notes on this notes page, and we're going to go back to this graph. And I told you it was rise over run, and we talked about how if you go from one point to the other, you rise. How many spaces do you rise? We went 1 space up, 3 spaces to the left, so that was a 1, -3 slope. Okay. Well, another way you could figure this out, if you just had the 2 points, was you do y minus y over x minus x. Remember, slope and constant rate of change are kind of backwards from our thinking. The y goes first on top, and then the x is on the bottom. So what I mean by this is I want you to consider these as these are points on a graph. So we need to figure out what the coordinate points are for this dot right here. So the x value for this dot right here is at -3 and 2. Okay, so you remember this from 6th grade math, coordinate points. This is your x, this is your y. Okay, and then this point right here is 0, +1 is your y. So x is your 0 and y is +1. Alright? So we're going to take those two things and we're going to plug it into this formula we just wrote. So y minus y, it doesn't really matter which one you put first. So we're just going to say we're going to start with this dot over here just because it's left to right. It doesn't matter. It'll give you the same answer. So we're going to say y minus y, so our two y values, we have a 2 and a 1. 2 and a 1. So we're going to say 2 minus 1 over -3 minus 0. Those are our two x values. So we just took our two y's from these 2 points, we subtract them, 2 x's on the bottom, and subtract them. So let's figure out what that is. 2 minus 1, well that's easy, it's 1. And negative 3 minus 0 was just negative 3. So here's the slope, 1 over negative 3. Is that the same thing we got when we did rise over run? Sure is. That's not a coincidence, guys. Just teaching you another way to find the slope. If they give you 2 points, even if you don't have a line, they just give you the points themselves on a piece of paper, give 2 coordinate points, you could figure out what the slope of that line would be if those were 2 points on a line. Okay, just by using this formula. Let's do another one. Let's do this one over here. So we have 2 points here. We're going to go with this is our first point and this is our second point. Okay, so this point right here is 0, negative 1. Our x is 0, our y is negative 1. And this point right here, our x is 3. Our y is negative 1. So x is 3, y is negative 1. So we're going to go over here and plug that into our y minus y over x minus x. So y minus y, negative 1 minus negative 1. Now I put parentheses around this negative 1 because it's just courtesy in math that you don't put two negatives or a minus and a negative not near each other, because sometimes they can be confusing, like it's one big minus sign. Okay, so just to separate those negative signs in the subtraction there. So let's do, those were our y's, and our x's are 0 and 3. 0 minus 3. So let's figure out what this would be. 1 minus 1. Okay, so remember our subtraction rules. We're going to add the opposite. That's what we're doing when we subtract. So now we have a negative 1 plus a positive 1. Well, negative 1 and a positive 1 makes a 0. 0 minus 3 is a negative 3. So 0 divided by anything is 0. Well, this is what we got for our slope anyways. 0 divided by anything is a 0. 0 slope. And that was true. Okay? Let's look at this one. Let's do this one over here. This is that weird undefined one. We could find 2 points on the line, and we could, using their coordinate points, their x and their y, we could figure out what the slope is even if we didn't have the graph. Okay? So let's see here. The coordinate point for this point here is negative 1 is our x, negative 1, and our y is a 2. And then we have our x here is negative 1, and our y is 0 on this point. Okay? So now we're going to plug that into our formula. Y minus y, 2 minus 0, x minus x, negative 1 minus negative 1. Okay? So this is just 2 on the top, and this becomes plus the opposite, that's 0. Well, we can't, anytime we divide by a 0, we can't divide by a 0, it is undefined. We cannot divide by 0. Don't divide by 0. It's undefined. So the difference between this one and this one was the 0 is on the bottom of the slope here. And that's why when you do 2 divided by 0, it's undefined. But the 0 is on the top of the slope here. 0 divided by anything is 0. That's the difference. Okay? Let's do one more. So we have these 2 dots right here. We have this one and this one on our line. Let's go ahead and put what the change in y, or y minus y, is. So the first one, the coordinate point is negative 4, 0, x and y. And the second one is, see, the x is 1, the y is negative 1. Alright, so let's do y minus y, so 0 minus negative 1. This is why you put those things over, minus negative 1. Sorry, should have put a parenthesis there. It's 0 minus a negative 1. And then negative 4 minus 1. Those are my x's. Okay, so let's do this subtraction plus the opposite. So that's just 1 over negative 4 minus 1 is like the same as negative 4 plus negative 1 over negative 5. Hold on. I put these points wrong on this one. Back up. Sorry. This is supposed to be a positive slope. That's not positive. And we already know the slope is 3 over 1. That's not 3 over 1. Okay. This is what happens when you're not being careful and you don't pay attention to what you're supposed to be doing. Sorry, guys. Okay. You gotta be careful, especially when you're dealing with the subtraction and negatives. It becomes a little bit tricky. So I had my x's and y's backwards here. The x here is 0, and the y is negative 4. I'm sorry about that. Negative 4 and 0. So erase that and change that. This one is still right. It's 1, negative 1. So instead of the numbers we just had subtracting, we got to redo that. We have y minus y is negative 4 minus negative 1, okay? And then 0, it's 0 minus 1, okay? X minus x. Okay, so negative 4 minus negative 1 is like negative 4 plus a negative 1, which is negative 3. And then 0 minus 1 is negative 1. So these negative signs, a negative 3 and a negative 1, they cancel out and become positive. So now our slope is just 3, which is what it should be. Apologize for that. You gotta be careful with your x's and your y's. So let's look at overall what we learned yesterday about positive and negative slopes. So this is a negative slope. Is this a negative slope? Yes. Nice. Negative. This is a 0 slope. 0 fun, flat slope. This is a undefined slope. Remember, undefined. And then this is a positive 3. Is this a positive slope? Yes, it sure is. Okay. All right, so that's what that's all for today. And then tomorrow we're going to start talking about our y-intercepts, which is what we call the b in our y equals mx plus b. All right. Have a good night.